Welcome to Building the Basics, where we walk you through the whys, whats, and hows of gun ownership.
In this episode today, we have Dan Gebers, who I am not even going to try to explain all of the wonderful things on his resume, but he's got a great bit of information that we're looking forward to getting from him today, and the episode topic is shotguns. So Dan and I, we've gotten to know each other over the last year and a half or so, done some classes, done some league nights with them. So Dan, turn it over to you to give yourself a little bit of an intro.
Great, thank you. First and foremost, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. I am a career police officer. I did 34 years full time. I did a lot of different things in law enforcement. One of my highlights was obviously my time on a SWAT team. I was a point man with a shotgun going through the door first. Then I moved back into the stack with an AR. Then I moved back as a sniper team leader. I ran our SWAT team for a short time, and it was probably one of the best times of my career. So I've been shooting since I was 8. Had a shotgun in my hand since then, and over time I've developed a lot of training with different weapons platforms, but shotgun seems to be my forte. I coached the University of New Hampshire shooting sports team in clay target sports. I shoot with those kids every Saturday. It's great to see young people who want to get involved and get firearms experience. Some of them have never fired a shotgun before in their lives. I've had some young women who have gotten in there, literally were like, I have never done this. I have no idea what this is about. Go through everything, and now some of them they're thirsty for it. It's like, well, we can't wait to do this every week. So, been teaching at White Birch Armory here for about 2.5 years. I'm one of the 4 instructors here that can teach every class that we offer here at White Birch, and I enjoy imparting that knowledge on our fellow shooters and new shooters to be.
Well, we appreciate it very much too, because we know that you have a lot of knowledge.
I certainly try to.
So before we get into content, Dan, just want to give you a little bit of a thank you gift for, we did this with a couple other guests on earlier episodes, so some grass-fed beef jerky. If
Fabulous.
You're interested in cracking it open here, you're more than welcome to. If not, you can save it for later.
Well,
it's up to you.
It would be rude for me not to. So, I mean, I
you.
got to share with my friends here, you know.
So Marvin, do you want to start things off? What kind of questions you have that you want to ask Dan?
We were talking a little bit before the podcast started, and, I think my big question is, why shotguns? It's one of those things that personally I had not gotten into it until about 4 years ago. And so I think it's something that a lot of people discount. We've all heard the President Biden, comment, hey, all you need is a shotgun, right? And, I think the more that I learn about shotguns, I'm like, hey, you know what? That wasn't just a meme or a joke. For a lot of people, a shotgun does fill a lot of those needs. And so, why a shotgun?
Well, I personally think that a shotgun is a very versatile weapons platform. A shotgun isn't just for home defense, all right? Shotgun can be used for a lot of different things. It can be used for competitive shooting, not only clay targets, but 3-gun. It can be used for hunting, obviously for helping feed your family, for recreation, just for plinking. But it offers the shooter and the owner the ability to do lots of different things with one platform. You can't do that with any other platform that's out there. You can't do it with a rifle. You can't do it with a pistol. But this is something that you can really curtail to what your needs are.
That's a great perspective on that. And so I guess with that, let's talk a bit about where that perspective comes from, Dan. Is how did you get started with shotguns, and how has that colored all the comments that you just made about how versatile that platform is?
Like I said, I've been shooting shotguns since I was 8 years old. I grew up in Colorado with a hunting family. I didn't want to be left behind. So my father, being former military himself, he had a great perspective, obviously, for what he wanted his children to do. And as I was discussing with you guys earlier, he made me take a hunter safety course when I was 8 years old, and I had to pass it with at least a 90%. I mean, no pressure on an 8-year-old kid, but I ended up passing it with a 95, thank goodness. And I mean, he was happy, I was happy, and he sat through hunter safety courses with my mother, all three of my older brothers, and myself. God bless the man for doing so. But he took it that serious, that he wanted all of his kids to know it. He wanted them to be safe with it, and he wanted them to do it a certain way. As I moved forward in life, I continued to shoot a shotgun. But as I got older, I started to want to go down the law enforcement path. And when I became old enough, I finally applied. I got hired by a sheriff's department in Colorado. I did 12 years in Colorado before coming out to New England. And again, part of law enforcement there, you learn handguns. And at the time, rifles were unheard of. The only people that had rifles in law enforcement at that time were specialty groups, SWAT guys, things like that. Our other weapon was a shotgun. Okay, we had buckshot, we had slug rounds. Okay, that's what we learned and that's what we trained on. So as I evolved in my career, and then finally moving to New England, and again getting hired with the police department and getting on the SWAT team here, I naturally navigated to a shotgun. My SWAT commander, he picked up right away that it was a knack for me. It was something that I understood. There wasn't a lot of training he had to do with me, and it just kind of went forward. Hindsight, I continued to shoot at a local gun club and was shooting clay targets, and I noticed that I started getting better and better and better. So eventually, I decided I was going to, after my SWAT career was over, I decided I was going to start competing in clay target sports. So I worked forward and put a lot of time and a lot of effort into that. And over time, I competed regionally, state and local, but I ended up competing in world championships down in San Antonio, Texas. I've won the New Hampshire State Championship in skeet. I think I've won the overall title 5 times, most recently just this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And then I actually won a world championship in San Antonio back in 2015 in my class. Nice. So clay target sports, again, growing up in a hunting family, wasn't a whole lot different for me, but I really understood it, and I've always just kind of navigated that way.
All right. Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. So, I think you kind of hit it on the head for a lot of the aspects that I think are pretty critical, in my opinion, for why shotguns are such should be a weapon system that a lot of people are considering when they're getting into firearms. But I think I would like to dispel some of the myths and maybe some of the misconceptions that people have about shotguns. Is, a lot of times people say, oh, well, you're just going to blow a big old hole in them, right? Like, just a shotgun is going to blow a big hole, or a shotgun is something it's a wall of lead, right? So, you can be 20 feet away and you're just going to, the spread is going to be, 5 by 5 feet, right? And it's just going to annihilate everything. Another misconception would be recoil, right? Like you see in the movies where somebody shoots a shotgun and then it just blows them backwards, right? Especially if they've got like a side by side or double barrel shotgun, they pull both of those triggers at the same time and they just get knocked off of their feet. So for anybody who's coming to you, Dan, and looking to get into shotguns, or if you were to convince somebody about getting into a shotgun as opposed to any other weapon system, what would be some of the things that you would say to address some of those misconceptions that I just brought up?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the first thing you said, Marvin, was, everybody thinks that, a shotgun is just going to have this big wall of lead that comes out and it's just going to destroy everything. You have to remember that depending upon what you're doing with this gun, a shotgun shell only has a certain number of pellets in it or one slug in it, depending upon what what payload you're using. Most shotguns have in this day and age we have what we call interchangeable chokes, to where you can either tighten the choke up to shoot further, or put a looser choke in there to get that pattern to spread faster. Some guns now, and ideally a lot of them that are home defense guns, they have a milled choke. It is a choke constriction that is milled into the barrel. You cannot change it, and it is set and meant for that specific purpose, where it keeps that pattern together to do what it needs to at known distance. Okay, I've heard a lot of people talk and say the same type of thing that you were referencing is, there's just so much and it's going to just destroy things. No, it will destroy what you are trying to and what you're intending to, but it's not going to, hit an intruder or go through a wall and continue on past that. Okay, it could, depending upon what you're shooting. Now, a 12 gauge 1 ounce rifled slug, when it's fired, is moving like a freight train. And there's a lot of kinetic energy behind that. And when you're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 430 grains, there's a lot there. And it will continue to move until it finally stops. But you have to, as a responsible gun owner and a shooter, you have to understand what those capabilities are. And if you don't, you're doing a disservice to yourself by not knowing those things. You have to know those things, and you have to practice with those things so that you understand what it can and cannot do, what it will and will not do. But that right there is one of those things that a lot of people have they have misinformation about. Second of all, recoil. Now, I try to tell people when they're looking at shotguns for defense or for purposes of, competing, hunting, whatever it is, I will tell them straight up, this is a weapon system like none other that's out there. You can do just about anything in the shooting sports world with a shotgun that you can't do with a pistol or a rifle. You can't shoot clay targets with an AR. You can't shoot clay targets with a pistol. You can't bird hunt with either one of those. I mean, you can try it, but your success rate's probably going to be fairly low. Then obviously you can defend yourself. You can put food on your table for your families. So there's a lot of different things that I point out to that. The other part of that too is I always tell them, listen, there's more felt recoil from a shotgun than what most people or what most guns put out there. I want them to understand it up front. It's not to scare them. It's not to discourage them from getting involved in a shotgun. But what it is trying to give them the whole picture and all the information that's out there so that they walk away from it going, okay, now I have I have some good information. Now I need to try and decide where and what I want to do with this. So, it really, again, there's a lot of bad information out there. And I think there's bad information out there about all shooting sports. But this is one of those where one little seed gets in there and it festers and grows, and then people are just like, oh my God, I want to be away from, I want nothing to do with a shotgun. And until they get it in their hands and they actually can see what they can do with it, then it finally changes that perspective.
And this was where the really fun conversation came in at League Night one time. And to our listeners, we kind of already talked about this, but I want to make sure that we actually have it on recording here. And Dan had listened to our home defense episode, and he was like, I don't remember exactly what you said, Dan, but it was it was a good episode, but you're missing something.
Right.
And in my head, I knew that we were missing a lot of the shotgun piece. Mm-hmm. And admittedly, shotguns are not my forte. I know that, and I need to get better at it, and I would love to take some classes with you for that. So,
well, one of if I remember correctly, the question that I asked you, Jim, and again, I've shot with you, I've seen you, been with you a lot. How quickly can you draw your handgun, fire 9 rounds into a target at 10 yards accurately? And your answer was, I believe somewhere around 3 seconds.
3 to 3.5 seconds, probably, yeah.
And then I said to you, well, I'll stand right next to you with a shotgun with double-aught buck round in it, and I'll shoot the same time. Now, mind you, double-aught buckshot, The pellets are almost the same size as a 9mm projectile.
And you got 9 of them in there.
And I have 9 of them in one shot.
Right.
And I can shoot the same target.
Yep.
And if I have to, I can follow it up and have 18.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do that faster and do more damage than you can with a handgun or a rifle.
And the light bulb just...
Yeah, the light bulb above your head just kind of went poof.
Yeah.
And went on. And you were like, wow, I never really thought about it that way.
And after the light bulb went off, I immediately said to you, Dan, I was like, I gotta get you on. And you're like, okay. So, but no, this is why it's just so important. I want to be a lifelong student of this, right? And I know for a fact I have a ton to learn. And Marvin and I were doing this so that we can impart some little bit of knowledge that we have, but we want to have guests on that can speak from this, vast amount of experience and expertise. And that's why, specifically with shotguns, it's like, we got to talk to Dan.
Well, even myself as an instructor, I'm still learning.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, doing what I do and teaching people. If I think that I know everything, I'm off base. Okay. I still learn and pick up things to this day. And if I don't do that, again, I'm doing the people that I teach a disservice. So I would rather learn and teach progressively so that people get a good education out of it than teaching, God forbid, the old cup and saucer method of shooting a pistol from years ago, where obviously we've completely evolved from that. And that's like, you see people doing that today and you go, wait, stop, time out.
Right. Yep. But it was just such I can visually just still see it vividly in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's such a great, and I've gone and told other people that, and it's just, they see it the same way.
When you tell somebody that and you give them that perspective, you can almost see the wheels start turning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I missing something? Or wow, I never really thought about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get that going, that's when you see some of these people come back and go, okay, tell me everything.
Right.
And when I have that opportunity, of course, I put my foot right through the door and keep going because I want people to be educated about it.
Yeah.
So we've touched on a lot of topics. So let's just talk a little bit about some of the nuances between shotguns that folks can get for each of the use cases that you had gone over. So, we just talked about home defense, hunting, and competition. Would you say that there is you could do all three with one single shotgun? Do I have to buy 3 different shotguns, or can I get one shotgun and fulfill all 3 of those use cases?
And to answer your question, Marvin, yes. You can buy one shotgun and you can fulfill all of those things with it. Just because you have a Remington 1187 in the closet doesn't mean that you can't defend yourself with it, okay? Doesn't mean that you can't compete with it, and doesn't mean that you can't put food on your table. It's one of those type of guns that you can do anything with. And that's the great thing about a shotgun platform, is that you can do all of those different things and invest in one gun.
And for our listeners, can you describe what a Remington 1187 would be? Perhaps also talk a bit about an 870 or versus a Mossberg 500 series, just to give our listeners a little bit,
a shockwave.
Yeah, shockwave, right, Jim?
Shockwave, yeah.
Well, again, when I give people information, I tell people the same thing. The only way to make a good educated selection on what you're trying to get is get guns in your hands. Okay? Certain guns are going to feel better to you than others. The way that it fits your shoulder, the way that your hands fit the grip, where your hands and where it meets your body, things are going to feel differently. Now, again, when it comes to shotguns, you can go bargain basement, a $400 shotgun, and you can go sky's the limit. Now, in my life, I have gone sky's the limit, and my home defense gun, 870 Remington 870 is a pump action shotgun. Generally, it's generally chambered in 12 gauge. But the great thing about it is you can shoot generally 2 3/4 inch shells or 3 inch shells. 2 3/4 inch are less powerful most of the time. 3-inch shells have more payload in them, so they have more buckshot or more birdshot in them, depending upon what you need. So there's a versatility right there. It gives you more options of what you can shoot. Then you can go to a semi-automatic shotgun. Some of the good semis that are out there, Mossberg 940 series is a good semi-automatic shotgun. Of course, the Beretta 1301 is fantastic. You can go to a Benelli M4. Again, you're going up in price the more you talk about these certain guns. But, my background and what I do, I've got a home defense shotgun, but it's for home defense. Now, everybody in my home knows how to shoot my guns. All right. I have a shotgun. It has a place, and my wife knows where the ammunition is for it. She knows how to run it. My daughter, same thing. Not that she's at home anymore, but if she's there, she knows where it's at. She knows how to run it. I'm a firm believer in if you have weapons in your home and you have people who are there, they need to know. They need to be educated. Okay. Then I stepped up years ago when I decided to take competition seriously. I had a really nice Browning over and under that I was working with, and it just wasn't what I wanted. And then I moved up to a Beretta over and under, and it was all right. But the more I got into it, the more I was like, I want something that's going to last me longer. So I went out and I found a good competition shotgun. Now, when I say I've gone sky's the limit, my competition shotgun is $15,000.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. The great thing about it is I have tubes that I can put in the barrels to gauge it down anywhere from 12 gauge to 410. And I shoot 4 gauges in competition. So I have one gun that I can shoot different gauges in and still compete and be competitive. But again, I've gone the extreme side of it because I wanted to really compete. I wanted something that was going to last my lifetime and not have to go, okay, now I've shot this gun apart. Now I need to buy something else again. But again, that's an extreme case here. Anybody who's wanting to get into shotgun work, anybody who wants to utilize a shotgun for anything, you can go and spend anywhere between $500 and $1,500 and have a quality gun that's going to do everything that you want and will last you as long as you take care of it. But again, I treat guns like cars. You have to do maintenance on them. You have to keep up the maintenance just like you would on a car, and they will last you. I do know some people that don't always do that, as we all do. But if you take care of them, they're an investment. They will take care of you as long as you take care of them.
That's very fair.
You mentioned something which I don't have a lot of experience with 410, right? So I've played with 12 gauge, I've played with 20 gauge. So when would somebody use 410?
It's not an ideal, and at 410, just so you guys know, 410 is actually a caliber. It's not a gauge per se. If you put it on the gauge system, how they came up with the gauging system, your most popular gauges that you hear about today, 10 gauge, 12 gauge, 16, everybody called it the Sweet 16, 20 gauge, 28 gauge, and the 410. Now, if you gauged a 410 out, it's like 67.5 gauge. It's a very tiny shell. It only carries half an ounce of lead or pellets in it, and that's what I shoot in competition.
Okay.
So, but the thing about a 410, and again, in my world of doing things that people say I can't do, I've actually shot skeet with a Taurus Judge with 410 shells. And a friend of mine said, "I don't think you can hit any." I tried 5 shots and I broke 4 out of 5.
Nice.
And this is with a pistol in my hand, swinging it like you would a shotgun, and I'm breaking targets. But 410 is used generally. There are home defense guns that are out there that people can utilize. That again, 410 doesn't have a lot of recoil. You put a 410 shell in there that has 4 buckshot pellets in it, still going to get the job done. Okay, still going to defend your home and defend you to make sure that you're safe. Is it ideal? I guess again, it's dealer's choice. It's up to you. 410. Especially when I'm shooting competition, you got to be right on. You got to know what your leads are. You got to know exactly what that pattern is like at a known distance to break the targets. But again, 410 is not an ideal gauge for anybody to just go out and start playing with. Take some practice and time to know what it does.
And so we're talking a bit about shotgun gauge and what folks can expect out of payload. So what would you say would be best for home defense if I was a brand new gun owner, I don't know what to get. What would you say? Hey, go out and pick up a 12, 16, 20. What?
So in my opinion, and again, just my opinion, I would go with a 12 gauge. And the reason for that, ammunition is more readily available in a 12 gauge. Okay. There are people that do hunt with 20 gauge, and there are buckshot rounds and hunting slugs, but they are meant for hunting. They're meant for taking down game. Will they still take care of an intruder in your home? Of course they will. But again, you have to worry about that, with a slug, you have to worry about that overpenetration. It's going to go in, it's going to go out, and it may go through your house and into your neighbor's home. Once you pull that trigger and that projectile leaves that barrel, you own the devastation that happens on the other end of that. So just things to think about. If it was me, I'd go out and get a 12 gauge, and I would buy low recoil rounds because they do make them, because there's less felt recoil when the gun is fired, and you get the same effect that you would from something that is more geared to hunting. They make them. They call them a federal law enforcement round, and they come in a 12 gauge slug, or they come in a slug, and they also come in buckshot. And they are soft shooting. I've had classes here where I've had people shoot both, and they're like, wow, huge difference in felt recoil.
So what do they do to the round itself, or to the
shell?
Yeah, to the shell itself.
Well, what they do is they back some of the powder off, and depending upon what system you're shooting it out of. Now, if you're shooting it out of a semi-auto, where you have like your Beretta 1301, your Benelli M4, the Mossberg 940 series. Again, some of that gas is what helps run the action on that gun. Just like in an AR or a pistol, every time you press that trigger, a round goes off. Okay, that gas is what helps run that action. So that part of that gas, what you would feel in felt recoil, is what helps the gun run. And again, it bleeds some of that off, so you're not feeling as much.
So is it safe to say that it's kind of similar to when you have different grain weights of like a 9mm, you have a 115 grain or 124 or 147? Is it safe to say it's similar-ish?
It is. It can be.
Can be, okay.
Fiocchi makes also a low recoil round.
Okay.
And again, I've shot those. Yeah, they're not quite as soft shooting as the Federals, but the Fiocchis are probably just a hair. You feel a hair more recoil in them. Not a lot. Mm-hmm. But again, you've got to play with those things. You've got to know what they feel like, so you can go, okay, I like this one, I don't like this one.
Yeah. And that, we talk about that a lot, Marvin, of just you got to try certain things to see how it functions in your gun. How do you know what a home defense hollow point is going to do in your gun if you never shoot it? Right. So it's all sorts of things that you have to be willing to buy a box, try it, and you'll find out if it works or it doesn't.
Sure.
Sometimes if you have a compensator on the front of your handgun, it's not going to cycle with certain grain weights.
So I'm going to continue down this. Hey, if I was a newbie gun owner, or I'm considering a shotgun, what to get. So we just talked about whether what gauge. So you're recommending 12 gauge. What about pump versus break action versus semi-automatic?
Okay. So again, for listeners as well as educational purposes, pump action shotgun is literally, it is a meat and potatoes gun. You feed it, you shoot it, you work the action with your non-dominant hand or your offhand, and then you have to pump that slide forward to get a new shell back in so that you can fire again. Again, that was my life. Going through doorways with that, it was my best friend for 4 years. So it very, very second nature to me to run a pump shotgun. Then a semi-auto is very nice because you can just feed it and you can shoot, and it just does all the work for you. Now, the limitations on a break open gun, side by side, over and under, you have 2 rounds. You have one barrel and the other. That's what you have. Where with your semi-autos, your pump actions, you can fit 3 to 5 to 7, depending upon what the magazine tube will hold. You can get more rounds in there, especially for self-defense. Now, you can't utilize something like that for hunting purposes because you're only allowed to have 3 rounds in a gun for hunting purposes. But when it comes to self-defense, it's game on. You know, as many as you can put in there and as many as you can get out, hey, more power to you.
So your recommendation would be a pump for new folks?
For years, and again, maybe it's just because I'm old school. Again, I like pumps just because, again, it's second nature to me. But with the weapon systems that have come out here in the recent years, as far as the availability of getting them, 1, but 2, the technology has advanced. I think semi-autos are really the way to go.
Okay.
And the reason that I say that is most shooters have shot some sort of form of a semi-automatic. Okay, they know how they feel, they have a theory, and they have an idea how they work. So because of that, it makes it an easier transition going to a different weapon system. And because of that, the semi-auto is just a way to go. 1, easier to shoot, but 2, it's easier on your shoulder. Okay, because of that gas bleed-off system that helps run the action, it makes it much more pleasant to shoot. And not telling tales, but obviously I've had Jim's parents in a class, and Jim's mom, she shot very well in the shotgun class. His dad did as well too, but I think his mom was more excited about things than his father. But she started off, I had her shoot a 20 gauge to start, and she said, well, can I try a 12 gauge? And I said, absolutely. I handed her the gun. She put it up on her shoulder. She did exactly what she was supposed to. And she looked at me afterwards and she goes, this wasn't bad. She goes, I want to shoot the 12 now. I'm like, okay.
Yep.
It's all you. Go ahead. So yeah, I mean, the great thing about a semi-auto is the fact that, again, they don't beat you up. And again, I've been shooting a shotgun for so long in my life. I mean, if you actually felt my shoulder, it's almost calloused because I shoot so much. I shoot somewhere around 10,000 rounds a year
of shotgun
when it comes to shotgun.
Wow. Goodness gracious! Wow.
Yeah, between practice and competition, I shoot probably close to 10,000 rounds a year. So
Wow,
That's awesome.
I reload my own shotgun shells because I have to. I would go broke
Yeah.
if I didn't. I have to. I mean, if you try to buy 25 rounds of 410 nowadays, they're almost $22 a box. So you're looking at almost $1 a round.
that's wild.
And I can reload a box from around $4.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's cost effective for me to do it. And I can load all 4 gauges. I can go 12, 20, 28, and 410.
Oh,
That's awesome.
nice. That's great.
Yeah, I've got loaders for all of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like I said, makes it way more cost effective on my pocket.
So to play devil's advocate and to because I know that there are always going to be guys out there who are going to, you should pick a pump action because of this or a semi-auto because of that. So just to kind of dispel some of this for our listeners who, our target audience are gun neophytes, right? They've probably not touched one. They're just looking to get one to start with. So I can just hear some of the internet chatter, right? Where people are like, well, a semi-automatic shotgun, you could have a malfunction. You would have to clear it, and semi-automatic shotguns don't want to eat all kinds of ammo. Some of them are really picky about the type of ammo they're going to run. And then you can also hear the other guy on the other side say, well, pump action shotgun, that's good for the guy who's been running a pump action shotgun for 20 years. But, somebody who's under stress and having to pull that trigger and then fully, pull that action all the way open and then pull it all the way back closed and load that next round. That's something that a newbie's probably not going to be able to do under stress, especially if somebody's kicking in their door in the middle of the night. So with those two more common, I guess, retorts that the armchair gun guys are going to provide for each one of those systems, What would you say to either one of those?
Okay.
I love the smirk on your face, Dan. I can't wait to hear the answer.
Okay. So let me pose this question back, Marvin. Can you have a malfunction with a handgun?
You can.
Can you have a malfunction with a rifle?
You can.
Okay. So just because you have a malfunction, what does that go to? Training.
Yeah. Remedial action. Yep.
Yep. You have to train it. If you don't train it, you won't do it. Having been former military, me being law enforcement, you train a certain way. You train how you're going to fight.
Yes.
Okay? When you have to rely on your training to carry you through something, your body goes right back to your training. And as long as you train it and you're properly educated and taught on it, that will carry you through those moments. And again, I'm speaking this from my own experience. I'm sure you dealt with it the same on your end, Marvin.
Yep.
And I've talked to a lot of people in law enforcement as well as the civilian population who have trained that way, and they've come out on the other end of it and said, you know what? Because of the way I trained, it helped get me through.
Yep. All right.
There you go. A long answer for two short questions.
Yeah. No, training is definitely it's muscle memory, right? When your gun goes down, when something happens, right? What are the things that you're going to do immediately? But to go back to that, right? Are there shotguns, semi-automatic shotguns that you would say are more reliable, would utilize a wider range of ammo? Have you noticed any of that, or is that just internet lore? Because my experience is only with the Beretta 1301, which I own currently, and then the Benelli M4, which I carried in Iraq, right? And I can tell you that the Benelli M4 liked most ammo, but the only thing that it didn't like, which made sense, were the plastic slugs that we use to knock out locks with, right? They always malfunction because there just wasn't enough powder, and it's also a plastic slug. But
Exactly.
Aside from that, would you say that you've noticed in your years of training and competing that there were certain semi-automatic shotguns that were a class above others in terms of, to use internet gun terms, digesting a wider range of ammunition or brands?
I love that term, digesting. In my realm, and again, I'm talking obviously law enforcement, and I'm talking obviously competition. What I have seen is that most ammunition, as long as it's quality ammunition, and I haven't seen too many different ammo companies out there that are like, Bill's shotgun ammo. I haven't seen anything like that. Most any reputable company, your big ones, Federal, Remington, which are owned by the same company now. Federal bought Remington, if you guys weren't aware of that. Fiocchi, Winchester. Most of that ammo right across the board will cycle out of any of those. It's like when you were talking about a specialty round, Marvin, for breaching, taking a door out, or a lock out. I can understand why, because that projectile and the way that they were built doesn't have enough time to build that gas pressure up, which is why you experience the malfunction. And again, the only way I've seen those type of things before, and I ask the questions: why did this happen, or how did this happen? And that's generally the issue, is it doesn't have enough time to build that pressure up before the powder burns off to completely get that hull out of the action so you can get another one in there. But most quality ammunition that's out there nowadays, especially modern ammo, it will go through a pump. It will go through a semi-auto. It will go through an over and under. You just don't have the problems that people can experience. Where I've seen it happen, more problems in competition mode, is where somebody's reloading and they mess up the process. Where their reloader doesn't dump the powder the way that it should. They don't get enough powder charge in there, therefore the round doesn't go off. A wad sticks in a barrel, and then you have to stop and clear the malfunction.
It's operator error.
It's operator error.
Yep.
That's exactly what it is.
Yep.
Okay.
A couple things on when you were talking semi versus pump. So when it comes to maintenance of semi-automatic versus pump action, so what would you say is maybe easier, or would you say it's negligible?
To me, it's negligible.
Okay.
Because you're really dealing with the same parts. The only thing that you have in a semi-auto, and depending upon what the system is, in a semi-auto, a gas-operated semi-auto, not a mechanical semi-auto, but you have a gas piston or some sort of a gas system that you need to clean occasionally. Your 1301, does it have a gas piston, Marvin?
It does not. It utilizes what's called the blink system. So
Okay. Yep. That's what I thought. What I thought. I've got a Beretta 391 that I use for competition. And it shoots, again, it's a 12 gauge, but it has a gas piston. So I've got to clean that, to clean carbon and things like that off of it. A pump action is very similar. I mean, you don't have the gas part of it, but all the components that are in there, the action parts, the actuator bars, the fore end, the barrel, all that stuff is all pretty much the same. The only thing you have differently there is in some of these guns is a gas system that you have to keep up maintenance on. It's only one more thing that you have to worry about cleaning as far as maintenance goes. And if the only one that I've ever seen, some of my UNH kids, we have club guns, and we've had problems with gas rings in their A300s where they get bent, and we have to put new rings in there. But that's the only thing that I've ever seen that had a problem. And that's college kids putting guns back together that aren't quite paying attention because they're all sitting around cleaning at the same time and talking and not quite paying attention the way they should. And I've corrected that on a couple of occasions for people. But as far as the maintenance goes, it's all pretty much the same. There really isn't a whole lot of difference to it.
So then the other question of cost. So is there a significant cost difference between a semi-auto and a pump?
You see a price jump.
Okay.
You do see a price jump. I know, again, your meat and potatoes Remington 870, you can probably pick up for about $450. Then you jump up to like the Mossberg, the 940 series, like we have that I utilize in classes here. You're looking at about $950 for that. Then you can step up to the Beretta, where you're talking about anywhere between $1,200 and $1,400. And then you can go up to your Benelli M4, where you're talking a couple of grand. So, I mean, it just depends on what you like, what your budget is,
right,
and what's going to work for you.
But there's something for everybody also.
There is.
Yeah.
There's definitely something for everybody.
Yeah. One thing that we're definitely aware of, and we have said this in numerous podcasts, of just we're not trying to be the law podcast. We're not trying to provide people legal advice, anything like that. We know that there's a lot of gun laws that are on the books right now. I believe it's north of 20,000 across the country, from whether it be local, state, federal, just blanket term gun control, quote unquote, right? I know that there's something going on with the 1301 in terms of where the importing and such like that. But is there anything that you want to caution folks right now? This is as of December of 2024, of what cautionary tales maybe they should be on the lookout for.
Well, again, we're lucky to where we live. New Hampshire's. We're in pretty good shape as far as gun laws and things like that here. I think any of the between Vermont, us, as well as Maine, we're okay. I think we all are kind of the same belief, and that's why we have the laws up here that we do. One of the things that's a little disturbing to me, and again, coaching college kids, is that a standard Beretta A300 semi-automatic is now illegal in Massachusetts.
Could you go into that a little bit?
Well, the way that their new law is down there is that a non-resident cannot enter the state of Massachusetts with a semi-automatic firearm for competition or hunting purposes unless it's registered with the state of Massachusetts. Now, my kids compete in a regional competition against all the other major colleges from New England in April. And we do that in Burlington, Massachusetts. Now, if I enter the state as the coach with our club guns that are all semi-autos, I'm in violation of their state law. Okay? Granted, I'm still involved in law enforcement,
Right.
and that probably would be my saving grace.
Sure.
But just the mere fact that you can't enter that state without them being registered with the state, it really kind of makes me scratch my head. And again, I understand they have reasons for doing what they do. But when you're talking a competitive team who competes against colleges from their state.
Right.
Now, when I'm talking colleges, Harvard, Yale, MIT, Northeastern, University of Vermont, University of Maine, West Point, Merchant Marine Academy out of New Jersey, the Naval Academy, okay? They all send college teams to this competition. Now we're in a position that because of this law, my kids potentially, if they possess a gun down there, even for competition purposes, are subject to arrest. So I know I've got friends down there that are big in legislation and working with the state, trying to see what they can do to overturn this. I do know that they were collecting signatures to try to get this, basically a stay on this until they could get something on the books to try to overturn it. They needed to have that done by Election Day. I have not heard whether or not they've gotten that taken care of or not. But again, as a college coach, it's troublesome for me because a sport that my own college kids have chosen to do and they paid to do,
Right.
technically can't even do it because of that. And again, that's not fair to them after they've invested time, money. Some of them have even bought their own firearms. But because of that, they're kind of behind the eight ball.
And that's purely from a competition perspective, living outside the state, that they're subject to this legislation.
It is.
Something that they would be able to own as long as they're of legal age, right? They would be able to legally own, say, in New Hampshire or Maine or Vermont. That's an issue getting into Massachusetts.
Yes.
Now, just like broad general terms, from what I understand, there's also restrictions on capacity within shotguns as well. So we do try to cater to an audience, no matter where in the country, right? So just off the top of your head, there's things that people need to consider when it comes to capacity if you're in certain states, right? So can you go into a little bit of,
They do. Most shotguns today are sold with some sort of a plug system in them to where you cannot put more than 2 shells into the magazine tube and then 1 in the chamber. I know for a fact that there are several states that are adhering to that, just even for recreational purposes, where I think we're lucky here in that where we live, that, if you're going to use something for home defense, it's game on. If you can put 10 shells in there, you're more than welcome to do so. But I know there are a lot of other states that are starting to do that just because of the fact that they're trying to control the gun population.
Yeah, our buddy Tim's down in Jersey, so we hear a lot of...
I'm sure you do.
We have a group chat, and the three of us love to chat, and Marvin and I will give Tim some much-needed ribbing so that he can get out of New Jersey.
And again, in those states, that's another thing when you're talking about a shotgun, is some of the rifled slugs are technically a hollow point, and if you go into New York or New Jersey and you're found in possession of those, you're going to get charged with a felony.
Right.
So again, you can run the risk if you want to, but you better know what you have and you better know what you can and can't do in those states by possessing that ammunition. Because obviously you can get yourself in a jam really quickly.
Yeah. So just for our listeners, this is just a small example for the last, maybe 5 minutes or so, talking about, things that sometimes it's like, like you said, Dan, you're scratching your head. It's like that. I'm just trying to compete, or I'm just trying to, have a shotgun for home defense, or I'm just trying to do something, right?
Right.
And then I'm penalized for things that people just.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do anything nefarious with a gun.
Exactly.
I'm doing something that I, one, enjoy, two, I enjoy the competition,
Mm-hmm.
but also, just by the mere fact that, I live here,
Right.
and, here in my own home state, that, I can do that. But the minute I cross a state line,
Mm-hmm.
I could be arrested.
Right.
It's a little unnerving.
Very. Yes. Thanks for taking a little detour there.
Oh, sure.
I didn't want to gloss over that too much. I want to make sure that our
Happy to do
listeners
so.
knew of what to consider and things that they'll need to, depending on what state you're in, need to have some considerations. One final question: Are there any restrictions of states whether you can own a pump or own a semi-automatic, like at all, like or are you free to have any type? You just have some magazine restriction.
Again,
kind of
I
thing.
know my home state of Colorado.
Yeah.
You can own anything.
Yep.
Here you can own anything.
Yep.
I do know they are trying to limit. They're trying to limit, obviously, mag capacity on guns.
Sure. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what it is,
Okay.
whether it's handgun, rifle, shotguns.
Okay.
That's why they're really starting to adhere to the plug systems in shotguns,
Mm-hmm.
semi-autos, and pumps, so that they can't be overloaded.
I gotcha. Okay.
It's again, it is what it is in today's world,
And everything that we're saying is as of December of
yeah,
2024.
it is.
So
It absolutely is.
as we have stressed in other episodes, you just got to keep up to speed, make sure that you're following things, and, we'll see what happens in the next, few years, see how it goes.
And if you're going to plan on traveling,
Yeah,
that's one of the
traveling
things that
stuff.
I try to tell people as well. If you're going to travel to another state and you're going to take a firearm with you, no matter what it is, whether it's handgun, rifle, shotgun, do a little homework ahead of time. It'll save you a lot of grief later. I know that in the past, knowing that I was going to be traveling, I will literally go to Gun Laws Massachusetts, Gun Laws New York, Gun Laws Connecticut, Gun Laws, and I'll screenshot their laws so that they can't, if I get stopped and they ask if I have a firearm in it, even if I say that I do, they can't question what I'm doing with it because I follow their law. I have heard horror stories of people who have been stopped, and they ask the officer asks them about a firearm, and they say they have it, and nobody can give them a straight answer as to what their law says, which is why I will screenshot it and I will have it in my phone so I can go, this is what your law says, black and white. Okay, I'm following and adhering to your state law. And again, I'm on that side of it. And I have been for over 35 years. But still, I don't want to get myself in trouble. But if I can do a little bit of homework ahead of time to save myself grief later, absolutely I'm going to.
Yeah. Thanks for the insight.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for anybody who may be traveling or curious. We always say this. Hey, do your homework, find out what's legal in your state, what's not, and then if you're traveling, figure out what the laws are. So I like that screenshot. That screenshot bit. I am going to steal that and do it myself. So I just had a few more questions. Let's get back to lighter fare. Back to newbie questions. Shotgun barrel lengths.
Yep.
You can get them from 18 and a half all the way up to, was it like 27 inches or longer? I mean, some of the competition shotguns I think are like insanely.
It's funny that you mentioned barrel length, Marvin, because going back in history just a little bit, many years ago, back in the late 60s, early 70s, the Marlin Company started producing a shotgun that they called the Marlin Goose Gun. Now, the Marlin Goose Gun had a barrel on it that was about 40 inches long.
Oh,
and
geez.
you could always tell somebody shooting one because their barrel stood up, about 2 feet higher than everybody else's, and you could see it. Oh, I can tell they're shooting a Marlin Goose Gun, and they always thought it was for better range. Well, that wasn't always the case, but standard lengths in shotguns, and again, depending upon what you're looking for. Most defense shotguns are probably around that 18 and a half inch version. My competition shotgun that I shoot is got a 30-inch barrel on it. Again, that helps me with weight and balance. That way, when I swing the gun, it feels the same. I can keep it moving, so I'm not swinging past a target or I'm lagging behind it. It really becomes preference for the shooter, and again, it's gonna depend on what they're doing with it. I don't want a 30-inch barrel that I have to go through a doorway with. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just that's going to defeat the purpose. I want something short that I can control and I can manipulate easily. And again, you've got to pick it out for what you're going to use it for.
All right, and if I say I wanted to get one for all three of those use cases, right? Home defense, hunting, competition. I want to get one shotgun. Is there a barrel length somewhere in the low 20s, maybe mid 20s?
There are some that are around the 22 to 24 inch era. Standard length on a lot of just your average garden variety shotgun, Mossberg, Remington, Winchester. Most of them are coming in standard lengths of barrel is anywhere between 26 and 30.
Okay, so probably looking at a 26 for a lot of folks who are out there looking to pick one up from the local gun store.
Yeah, if they're trying to check off all three of those boxes, hunting, self-defense, competitive shooting, or clay target shooting, you could probably do that. Where most people in today's world, depending upon what their end game is, a lot of them are going to those self-defense shotguns that are shorter barreled. So it's all going to be personal preference.
Gotcha.
There's that phrase again, Marvin. We always come up with that, don't we?
Yes. Well, it's the answer is it depends. Right?
It depends. That's right.
That's always the answer.
So what about accessories, right? So I'll give you an example. So when I got my 590, I had to, because of my length of pull on my arms, I actually had to change out the stock. So with the mag pull stock, right? It just shrank it by I don't know, I didn't measure it, but it was maybe 3/4 of an inch or so. And man, it made such a difference, right? It was so much more comfortable for me, and I can actually, run the pump. It's great. So you have things like that people might need to play with.
Yes.
What about, a side saddle or a red dot or anything like that, a flashlight, what for
pistol grip.
And again, our target are a pistol grip, right? So there's things that, there's a lot of stuff out there, just like any kind of accessorizing with firearms. So what would you kind of recommend for a newbie?
Well, again,
it depends.
It is. It's so fluid. You can do so much with again, you've got to really curtail it to what you're going to do. Now, a lot of people who they're going to own a shotgun for hunting purposes. One of the first things they're going to do is they're going to put a sling on it. Okay, most shotguns have sling points, and they're going to put a sling on it because, again, when you're walking out through the woods, do you really want to carry this? Walking through there like Elmer Fudd with his side by side, or do you want to sling it over your shoulder to get to where you're going and then put the gun in your hands? Okay, that's probably one of the most. And the other thing about that. A sling is an underrated accessory for a gun, whether it's a rifle or a shotgun. That sling can give you, again, more stability, a better anchor point, so that when I know we were talking earlier about 3 points, 4 points of contact in a body, to where you can really utilize that gun the way that it needs to be. If you're not using a sling for, again, home defense or hunting purposes, you're doing yourself a disservice, because all you're doing is, one, you're going to fatigue yourself, and two, you're not utilizing the gun to the best of its capability. One of the other things, again, depending upon what you're utilizing it for, if you're going to utilize it for home defense, okay, you're in your home and you hear the bump in the night, okay, you don't know exactly what's there, but you go down with your 1301 or your 590 and what's there? How do you know? How can you identify that? Mm-hmm. Good flashlight. Good flashlight is something that's very important. Okay, we don't take sound shots. Oh yeah, there was something over there. No, it doesn't work that way. You've got to be able to identify what is a threat to you. Okay, and the only way to do that is to have something like that. Now, when we're talking about a flashlight is good for a couple of different reasons. One, it illuminates an area so you can see what's there. But the other part of that too is if you have an intruder and you flash that flashlight in their eyes for a second, it gives you the opportunity to blind them for a moment and move, because they're going to be looking where you were, not where you are. So again, that gives you the opportunity to move and get out of their way, and it gives you the tactical advantage. So again, a sling, a good flashlight, those are things that are I think are paramount for a shotgun.
And that's more for a home defense scenario. It's
home
not like you're
defense.
using, the flashlight for competition and all that, right?
No,
so
because-
again, it goes to
No, I shoot in the middle of the summer in the
Yeah.
daytime when it's nice and sunny out, 100 degrees on asphalt, and I'm baking out there. But yeah, I don't have to worry about seeing too much out there.
right.
I think the only other thing would be use of red dots. We talked about red dots on rifles and pistols a lot in our other episodes, and so what have you seen in terms of use of red dots on shotguns, Dan?
Well, as far as red dots are going nowadays, I mean, red dots have become such a fabulous tool, not only for pistols and rifles, but they are also a great tool for a shotgun. Again, you guys both having utilized red dots on your firearms, you know that what you see is what you get, and the easeability of sighting that gun with that is just so much easier. The novice, once it's sighted into them, they know what they're getting. They know if they get that dot and it's somewhere close to what they want, it's good to go. I've seen turkey hunters use red dots on shotguns for hunting purposes. Turkey hunters, they want to be able to literally take the turkey's head right off, and they want something very precise there.
Right.
And I've seen them utilize that. But again, home defense. I just saw one not too long ago. It had a Sig Romeo on it, and it actually, it was co-witnessed with the front bead on the front of the shotgun, and it worked. It looked like it worked really, really well. And it again, for me, I hadn't seen too much of that, but when I saw that, I was like, that's an excellent use of a red dot. Excellent use of a red dot for a shotgun. And I just think, having done it the hard way for as many years as I did, I shot with iron sights for 30 years of my career. And then when I finally got the opportunity, I went to a red dot. I'm like, I'm never going back.
It's a game changer.
It is. It's completely a game changer. And I tell people that in all of my classes, whether it's rifle, pistol, shotgun. Once you learn this and once you utilize this, there's no going back. That it increases the accuracy and it lessens liability because you're putting the rounds where you want.
Are there any brands of red dots that you would say you would trust more on a shotgun specifically? Aimpoint has a really good one that's kind of more heavy duty, and I've seen that one on shotguns for again for hunting purposes, deer, turkeys, things like that. They seem to be pretty rugged. A lot of the manufacturers say that theirs, Trijicon is another one that says that theirs will stand up to the recoil. Yeah.
I don't know whether they've tested it too much with shotguns, but I'd certainly be willing to put one to the test to see.
Yeah, it's not like anybody should be getting the Amazon special.
No.
Yeah, and popping it on your 12 gauge.
It's funny you said that. Somebody came in here one day. They came into White Birch and they said something about, they had a red dot on their gun and they said it just wasn't lasting. And I said, well, what was it? And when I looked at it, it was a daisy from like
my gosh.
from like a BB gun.
Oh no.
And I said, well, I wonder why. That's meant for a BB gun, not for a firearm.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I just thought, with a red dot, we could put anything on it. I'm like, no. That doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's not going to stand up to the abuse.
Let's have a chat. Let's talk. That's
Yeah,
funny.
I'm personally running a HoloSun 509T on my 1301 right now, and so far so good. It's only been like 300-ish rounds right now, but no issues. I like the shake awake. It's
Yep.
that way I'm not killing the battery. And then it's fully enclosed emitter, so shooting in the rain or whatever the case might be, I'm not getting the dots not turning into 1,000 dots. So
Yeah, and that's great. If it's holding up that well, sounds like it's meant for it, and it'll work well for you, Marvin.
yeah.
So I got one thing here that I don't think we've really touched on, and this is probably going to be difficult for you, Dan. So what would you say are any drawbacks to shotguns?
Okay. I'll rain on the parade a little bit here. Again, capacity. But where I lack capacity, I make up for in payload. If we're talking a 2 3/4 inch double-aught buck round, I've got 9 projectiles in one shot. I can follow that up with a second where I have 18. Okay? I don't think, unless it's the Terminator, I don't think that anybody's going to continue after 2 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
If they're trying to do harm to myself or my family, and that's my weapon of choice, it's going to end there. Where I and again, a shotgun, you have to remember the whole job of a shotgun is to eat. It eats. You have to feed it. If you don't feed it, it doesn't eat. Okay? And again, I lack capacity there, but I make up for it in, again, payload. So I'll trust myself.
Yeah.
I'll trust myself and my abilities to that. Would I go to a handgun or a rifle? Of course I would.
Sure.
Of course I would.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I've been shooting for 49 years of my life. So why wouldn't I? But if I want something to defend my home with, and I want something that is going to get the job done, I'll go to a shotgun. And like I said, nothing says I can't have more rounds with me. I just have to be quick about it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get 2 off and the job's not over with, there's a problem, and it's probably operator error. It's probably me. But I would think that problem will be solved quickly.
Understood. Yeah. Thanks.
The last thing I wanted to just ask about was just some quick techniques that people might hear about. Flashing the front bead, push-pull technique, things like that. As our listeners have start diving into the world of shotguns, they're going to hear some of these things. I actually personally never heard about push-pull until I think I saw it on a video, Active Self-Protection, ASP, and they were talking about how amazing it was. And I'd always just been shooting a shotgun, just the way that I shot a rifle. And then I was like, holy crap, this is game-changing for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very different. My stance completely changes when I'm shooting a shotgun versus when I'm shooting a rifle or handgun. And it has to. When you think of the power that shotgun has and the recoil that you feel, if you were to shoot it, and again, I'm a classic isosceles style shooter. I am very, with my training, I was always taught keep my body armor towards the threat. Okay? So when I present a handgun, it is literally straight out in front of me like this. My toes are forward so that I can move laterally, forward, backwards, however I need to. And I shoot a rifle the exact same way. But when I switch to a shotgun, I am more in a modified Weaver stance where I have my non-dominant leg is forward, my strong leg is back, so that I can lean into this gun and I can deal with what is going on there. But I am another one of those that will, like Marvin was saying, when you're pulling the gun in nice and tight to the shoulder and you're pushing forward, again, that ties that gun to your body some, and it will help you manage it. And it makes it a much easier system to shoot when you think about it in those terms. People, when I have them in the class, like I said, I had you folks in there, and that was one of those where, okay, yeah, you may have shot a little bit, but this is a different animal, so you have to treat it as such. This isn't a puppy dog. This is a grizzly bear.
Right.
and you have to treat it that way. So you can't just go, okay, I'm going to shoot this the same.
Right.
So when you're talking about, literally a shotgun is, like I said, it's a pointed weapon, And that's the great thing about it, is literally, as long as you have your face down on the stock and you're looking down the bead of that, towards the front bead or the front side of that gun, as long as it is somewhere close to what you want, it's game on. Okay, you can be quick with it, you can be accurate with it, and again, I don't, I teach this here, but I don't, it's not something that I would do unless it was a last ditch effort for me. But you can certainly point shoot with it. Okay, shooting is hand and eye coordination. You've both experienced that, so you know what I'm talking about there. And again, if you let your hands and your eyes work together, you can. I do it with my kids. I tell them that it's a sport all the time. It's a hand-eye coordinated sport.
Yep.
And I'll have them throw clay targets for me when they don't believe it, and I'll literally track the target through the air using my offhand to point towards the target, and I'll break targets out of the air, and they're like,
"How did you do that?
How did you do that?" And I said, "Well, it's exactly what I told you. Your hands will go where your eyes look if you allow it to happen that way."
Yeah.
And I mean, as a last ditch effort, if I had to do it and I had it, somebody had the drop on me and I had to get a round off quickly, could I fire and be fairly accurate? Sure, I can. Is it going to be precise? No, but it's going to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different things, but again, it goes back to a topic we talked about a while ago. You have to train.
Yeah.
If you don't train it, you're not going to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say that enough about the training aspect, is people need to train. If they're going to do this and they want to do this and they want to do it well, I've seen it in my career where officers that I trained, the only time that they ever went and shot was qual days. And it's like, this can mean the difference in your life or my life.
Mm-hmm.
Take this seriously. It's like a carpenter. Carpenter runs a hammer, he runs a saw, things like that. He didn't just do that by happenstance.
Right.
He's utilized the tool and he uses it well. You as in law enforcement should be doing that all the time, because it's something that can save your life or somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
So and I tell people in all of my classes, train how you're going to fight. Always train how you fight, because it will help you on the backside.
Yeah, and for those who might be questioning also when it comes to the training piece, this isn't something like the shotgun isn't something that is only good for within 5 yards. Dan, you were giving us a little bit of a story before we started recording, just of your comfort level of how far out you're good with shooting shotgun. So just give a little.
Yeah,
give a little there.
And again, having grown up with literally a shotgun attached to me as much as I did, I when it came to the tactical side of this, when I obviously got into the law enforcement side, it was routine that I would practice shooting an 8-inch gong with 1-ounce slugs at 50 yards. And then I'd shoot body shots on a silhouette at 100. And I was comfortable enough in my own abilities and trusting my equipment to know that I could make that shot if I had to. So again, I invested the time.
Yep.
I invested it in myself because I wanted to make sure that in the event I was put into that position, that I knew
Mm-hmm.
that I had 100% confidence that I could do that if I had to.
Yeah.
So again, it's just, it is what you make of it.
Right.
And if you want to be good at it, you got to practice it. You look at a piano player, they don't just sit down on a piano and start playing songs. They don't play Beethoven.
Mm-hmm.
They start out slow and they train and they work and they train, and eventually the songs come out. But this is no different. You have to train it if you want to be good at it.
And I think that's one of the things that differentiates a shotgun from, say, a rifle or a pistol is the one thing, you zero your weapons, but I think for shotguns, one of the big pieces is patterning. New gun owners who are looking into shotguns will probably hear that a lot, is patterning your shotgun, right? So different loads, different companies, different barrel lengths, different chokes, you're going to get a different pattern. And so to your point, right, the training is about knowing your weapon system. And so part of knowing your weapon system, especially if it's a shotgun, is knowing the pattern of your shot of your whatever your preferred home defense load ends up being. And so, do you want to expand a little bit on patterning for our listeners, Dan?
Yeah, when we're talking about patterning, and again, I can speak to this obviously from the competition side of it all the way to the tactical side of it. That my furthest shot when I'm shooting American skeet, my furthest shot is 21 yards away. Okay, and I want to put as many of those pellets in a 30-inch circle as I can at 21 yards. Now, I've patterned my gun. I know exactly how my tubes in my competition gun run. I know what the chokes do. I've seen chokes where the pattern was off just slightly, and I'll call the company and have them send me new ones because they're not where I want them to be. On the other side of it, on the tactical side of it, you've got to be able to take the gun out, and you've got to be able to shoot it at different distances so you know what this payload is going to do at a known yard. Now, anything that's a milled choke is probably going to be more of like what they classify as probably a modified choke. Anything that's fixed into the gun, 9 times out of 10 is going to be a modified choke. You're going to get a very, very small spread with that pattern anywhere out to about 12 to 15 yards. Past 15 yards, you're going to see that pattern or those projectiles start to open because that's the way that it's meant to work. It's not going to be a nice little tight hole. The further out you go, depending upon what choke you have in your gun, it may stay together or it may open quickly where you get, 15, 18 inches out of this. But again, you've got to know what your gun is capable of doing, and you have to do it in a manner where you train and teach it, or you actually shoot it, so you know what that does at those different known yardages. It's no different than when I was a sniper on the SWAT team, okay? I had to know what my rifle would do from 25 yards out to 500 yards and beyond, and the only way that I did that is I had a dope book. Every shot that I took was written in that book, so that if I had to recreate that scenario or that situation in a known condition, I could do that. You don't have to go that detailed with it, but it behooves you as a shooter and somebody who's going to utilize this gun for certain things to know what that does, because it helps you as the shooter to know how the gun is going to react in certain, with certain ammunition. Is triple-aught buck better? Is double-aught buck better? Is a slug better? Okay, you've got to know what those things are going to do on paper, so you know what it does, obviously, for defense.
Makes sense. Dan, I think that's pretty much like all the topics that we were looking to cover. But I want to turn it over to you. Is there anything that you specifically have that you're like, these are some things that I want newer shotgun shooters to know, or like anything that we might have missed?
Touching back on something that Marvin said, it's that misinformation that's out there. The first thing is the fear factor. People look at a shotgun and they go, "Ooh, I know they're the recoil, and when they go off, how much kick they have." Again, depending upon how they're taught. Now, majority of people who have been shooting or have gotten any kind of their background, they've been out in the woods or out on grandpa's land, and here's the gun, there's the can, go ahead and shoot at it.
Right, yeah.
It's the formal education part of that. And as long as they're taught properly, as long as they have the proper education for it, a lot of those issues are nullified. Fear factor is one of those that is very real to people. And I've seen it in a lot of my basic classes where I don't know if I can do this. You can do this. And I'll shoot a shotgun before they do, so they can see exactly what it's like. So they see how I hold it, what the effects are, how my body deals with the recoil. I'm not going to force anybody to do anything, but I want them to understand it and have a healthy respect for it. And I think you have to have a healthy respect for any firearm, no matter what it is, but a shotgun especially, because just the power and the devastation that it can cause very, very, very quickly. Again, kids, I don't. I love seeing kids that get into any shooting sport, whether it's archery, whether it's handguns, rifles, pistols, or shotguns. Doesn't matter to me. I love getting kids involved. And I can tell you, I have been up against in competition some kids who are 12, 15 years old that can outshoot me. And they are a sight to see. And again, it's the education, the training, their background. They were literally raised into it. And I tell you what,
That's got to be cool to see.
it is exciting to see somebody that is that young that can shoot that well. And as they get older, they're only going to get better.
Which is scary to think of.
It is. It is scary.
Yeah.
When I'm shooting, out of a 400, I'm shooting a 395, 396.
Yeah.
And some of these kids are literally nipping at my heels with 393, 394s. And I'm going, wow, where did you come from?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's great to have kids get involved in it just because of the fact that most of the time, if you can get kids involved, you can get families involved.
Yeah.
Women, another thing. I love getting women involved. I had one student here that I've gone through. She's gone through all 3 of my shotgun classes. She was a little worried to start off, but I'm telling you what, she went right through the S1, the S2, and the S3 class. The S3 class, she said, probably was the best class she's ever gone to.
That's awesome.
And she went out after the level 2 class, and she bought her own shotgun.
No kidding.
Yep.
That's
she
cool.
bought a 940 right out of the
Nice.
showroom, and she went through that, and she runs that shotgun with no problem whatsoever.
That's great.
Yep. She was very impressive to watch.
That's
So,
awesome. Cool. Marvin, do you have any closing thoughts or questions before we get rolling?
No. Do you have any social media or any place that people can find you, Dan, or just show up to White Birch and say I want to?
I can be obviously I can be contacted. And I can be found through White Birch. I have a lot of people that contact me through here. I have a Facebook page. It's about the only social media that I have. I'm not an Instagram guy. I'm not anything like that. But
I think you said at the beginning you teach pretty much every class here.
yeah. I teach every class that I can here, and then
Yeah.
obviously. I have people contact me quite often. I've got some people that are here that want to learn some clay target sport shooting, and I'm willing to help them any way that I can because I'm shooting sports have been really good to me, and again I get that from my father, and if I can impart that knowledge and give that back, because again it's been good to me, I want to do that. And I'm happy to do that with anybody, and it doesn't matter what the platform is. You want to learn how to shoot a pea shooter? Okay, fine, I'll help you. But if you want the other stuff, I'm happy to help with that. But I'm a firm believer in getting people involved with firearms, and getting that bad information out, because there's a lot of good things that come from sportsmanship and things like that when it comes to competition. The camaraderie with shooters like yourselves that obviously have a true passion and love for the sport, as well as the disciplines. But aside of it, we live in a great country, and there are a lot of countries around this world that don't have this ability, and it's been part of my life since I was born. And I really feel that, if people want to protect themselves, want to educate themselves, shooting sports is a great way to do that. And I really enjoy it, and I'll continue to do it until my time's up.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dan, for your time tonight. And thanks to White Birch again for allowing us to record here. And everybody who is interested in taking maybe not only shotgun, but handgun, rifle, any kind of course here, definitely give White Birch Armory a call here and see if you can get hooked up with Dan and one of his classes. He's been phenomenal with the league nights and the training that he's provided my family and I. So just thanks for all the wonderful instruction that you've given. So we appreciate it very much.
You're very, very welcome. Again, Marvin, thank you very much for having me. Jim, thank you for having
Thanks,
me.
Dan.
Absolutely.
My pleasure to help out, and obviously going forward, if there's anything else I can help with at all, feel free just to let me know.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dan.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Take care.